everyone, my name is Catalyst, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the third episode of Battlefield Breakdown, a series in which I analyze elite Battlefield players' gameplay and explain why and how they were able to perform at such a high level. You knew this video was coming eventually. I mean, how could you make an educational series about the best Battlefield players and not talk about the Lord of Forehead? Before we get started today, just a quick reminder, the way the YouTube algorithm suggests content is based on how much you interact with it. So if you enjoy this type of content and want to see more of it, or want to see more of me in general, make sure you subscribe and interact with the video in some way, such as liking or commenting, so you don't miss any future uploads or announcements. As a short rundown of how the series works, the players that will be featured in this series will all be content creators, as they are the most accessible for people who want to watch more. As always, you are free to recommend players in the comment section below. As of now, all these creators are active on Battlefield 5, as it is the most recent game and offers the most to teach and learn. And finally, this is not a conversation about who is the overall best player, but instead a series that highlights certain things that players do exceptionally well. And today we are discussing Enders and his overall game knowledge and game sense, and why he is the smartest player currently playing. As you've probably gathered, I have a lot of respect for Enders and how he has been able to stream Battlefield 5 nearly every single day since the alpha and not go certifiably insane. Or maybe he has gone insane and that is what has made him so cracked at the game, but my money is on how much he has grinded to get to where he is today. In the first episode, we talked about Max Zeke and how his positioning and game knowledge allowed him to outplay his opponents. And last week, we talked about Baranox and his ridiculous aim. When thinking about what to talk about today for Enders, I came to the conclusion that Enders exemplifies a lot of the same traits from both players. Enders is incredibly smart about his positioning and also has the aim necessary to pull off some pretty nice flicks and twitches when he needs to, but the brilliant thing about Enders is that he seemingly would rather outplay his enemies by outsmarting them instead of relying on his aim. You've probably heard him say that positioning is one of the most important parts of playing Battlefield, and for me personally, I find this to be absolutely true. With that being said, the way that Enders uses angles and his map knowledge to his advantage is one of my favorite parts of his game, and this clip that we've been watching has a ton of angle abuse, just really smart decision making. We are going to be doing a lot of pausing in this clip when we watch it back, so be prepared. For this clip, I want you to focus on how Enders utilizes the high ground in the train car to minimize the angles that he has to watch and funnel his enemies into a kill zone. Here we see Enders in a 1vx situation, and after drawing some damage on the first player, he jumps back into the car and lean peeks to finish off the kill, which after he does get the kill, he rotates to the higher ground to cut off the player on his right, because this is the enemy that poses the biggest threat to Enders. Something that you'll see him talk about a lot is knowing when to leave a fight and when to keep fighting, and I think this is a really good example that explains why that is so important to him. Enders could easily have ran up to the opening in the car and challenged the other enemies in the car, but there are a few reasons why he didn't here. First of all, the numbers are not in Enders' favor. He is in a 1vx situation, and he doesn't know exactly how many players are there, despite killing 2 people already. Secondly, he has already used his health pack, and now has to deal with the ever-so-loved attrition system. And finally, even though Enders knows generally speaking where the enemies are, he isn't 100% sure because he had to turn his back to them momentarily. So the correct decision here, and ultimately what Enders decides to do, is to retreat and reevaluate the situation, and he does this by quickly sliding away to eliminate line of sight. I'd like to think that if Enders still had his health pack, he might have decided to go up and challenge the enemies, but we'll never really know. Next, I really want to hyper-focus about why Enders' positioning here is so smart and why it allows him to win this 1vx situation. For the current situation that he is in, this is the safest position that Enders could possibly be in, and he could only know this for hours in experience and game sense and game time. Not only does this spot give him a head glitch at a great angle that allows him to see directly down the train car that he knows has enemies in it, but as I mentioned earlier, it also artificially decreases the amount of ways that he can be attacked from and creates himself a kill zone. As we pause the clip here, we can see that there are only a few ways that the enemies can push Enders, and neither are very advantageous to them. The end of the train car is too high for an enemy player to head glitch off of, so theoretically he is safe, and if an enemy decides to push Enders all the way to his right, Enders would be able to hear his footsteps and know he is coming long before that enemy has a chance to kill him. The only other option is for the enemy to wide peek Enders on the left and leave himself completely exposed in an attempt to hit a very difficult shot at that angle. You would essentially have to hit all headshots at that angle, and Enders knows this, and this is actually what happens in the clip, and the assault player pushing him gets smoked pretty easily. Speaking of smoked, if you remember last week's episode of Battlefield Breakdown, you'll remember that we talked about smoke placement and how you should always smoke in front of yourself or whichever direction you are heading or needing to go to achieve maximum effectiveness, as opposed to smoking on top of yourself like a lot of players seem to do. In the example clip we used, we saw Baronox smoke into the direction that he wanted to go, and it discombobulated the enemy so much that he was able to clear out the entire area with ease. Here we see the enemy display exactly why you shouldn't smoke on top of yourself when going for a revive, even if it seems like a good idea at the time. Now, depending on the situation, sometimes your only play is to smoke on top of yourself when you are going for a revive, or maybe you just need to ninja vanish. Some may argue that if you need to smoke yourself like that for a revive, then you shouldn't be going for it in the first place because it's unsafe, but I know there are some Reddit medic mains that are about to flip out on me with this point, so sure, I suppose that yes, theoretically, smoking on top of yourself is a good idea when it is your only option, but Enders here is about to show you why majority of the time it is a bad idea and a huge risk to do so. Yep. And wait for him to reload, and yep. See, if the medic threw smoke at Enders here instead of on top of himself, this death would not have happened, or at least would have not have happened in this exact manner, because I'll give all you Reddit medics a secret. When good players like Enders see smoke pop off in an area in which they just killed somebody, we know that a revive attempt is coming, and all we have to do is throw a grenade or launch some explosives in the general area to kill you and prevent the revive. Or if we remember exactly where that person was killed, either we see the body or we see the little ammo pouch that is deposited every single time we get a kill, we can just fire a spray towards the body and you are a free kill. It's not us hacking and seeing you through smoke, we just know exactly what you're going to do. So, in conclusion, for the second week in a row now, don't smoke on top of yourself unless you need to completely vanish. Always smoke in the direction that you are going to and or where the enemy is. A pretty cool little moment here, Enders actually recognizes that the damage he gave when firing Piats into the smoke was greater than 100, so he knows that there is another player in the smoke somewhere on low health, so he pre-fires a shot, and it's so fast in real time that you wouldn't be able to notice this, but he actually gets a hit marker on the guy in the smoke before accurately flicking onto the other guy's head, before then going back to the guy in the smoke because he knows he's already there, all while being incredibly accurate with his shots and crouching between bursts to avoid headshots from the enemy. Some really, really nice stuff here, very enjoyable to watch. Enders moves up here and he almost dies, and I assume that he thought the footsteps that he was hearing were his teammates since his blueberry teammate pushed on ahead of him earlier on in the clip, but Enders has a really good reaction time here, so he's able to win the gunfight pretty easily. He re-peeks and sees another wave of enemies, and I love what he does here. Enders does a really nice job at changing lines of sight and changing the eye levels of the enemies that he is engaging here and mixing it up. Kind of like the old adage that a sniper should never stay in one place. I think you should also adopt it to your more wider infantry gameplay like Enders does here. He can only peek this angle down the train car for a second to see if he can pick up an easy kill on an enemy W-king through the train before rotating back over to the other side, and he lays down and shoots the cankles of the first enemy, which to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have thought of that, and then he rushes back to his safe space and changes the eye level again, going back from down low to up high, and you have to imagine that this is confusing for the enemies, and the farm continues. One guy in the train car and another easy pair of kills before Enders pushes up and shows why he's just built different, just having superior reaction time and speed to kill the last few enemies. That was one extremely in-depth clip that looked relatively simple on the surface. The second and final clip that we'll be looking at today is a little bit more tame, I promise, but it'll end up being a great example as to why Enders' playstyle is so effective, and it really all comes down to game knowledge and game sense. As we can see here, Enders is playing with the ZK on Twisted Steel Breakthrough. Not the combination that I would use, but Enders and the ZK are like peanut butter and jelly, so we'll know it work out for him. We know at first glance that Enders is on the offensive pushing an objective here. Enders will actually get shot in the back, and this is a pretty pivotal moment in the clip, even though it's so early on. Enders will decide to completely ignore the player that is behind him and continue to push onto the objective. Now, for some of you, this might be a pretty confusing decision. I mean, our natural instinct when we get shot is to turn around and try and identify where we are being shot from and initiate our fight or flight reflexes. Whereas here, Enders doesn't even seem to care that he gets shot. Well, why is that? Well, I want you to pay attention to two things in particular. First, look at his minimap. Enders is practically the only one pushing the objective here. Secondly, look at how much damage the shot does to Enders. One shot only did 18 damage, which means that it's more than likely that it is a 6 to 7 PTK weapon that is shooting him, and based on the audio, it sounds like that shot came from further away. Enders decides to push the way that he does for two compounding reasons, the first of which being that the person that is shooting him does not pose enough of a threat in order for Enders to worry too much about him based on the information that Enders had just gotten because he had just taken damage. And because of that, it would be very unwise for Enders to turn his back to an entire objective of enemies in which he has no idea where they are, just to deal with one player that poses no immediate threat to him. So Enders slides into the smoke and loses his line of sight. He maneuvers his way to a spot in which he is out of the attacker's line of sight so he can heal quickly, eliminate another enemy, and then recheck briefly to see if that player is still looking for him. And based on audio cues and the voice line that his character yells, Enders got shot by a hiding sniper with a suppressed M1911 pistol. So, should Enders really expose his back to an entire objective to turn around and search for the guy that doesn't even appear to be close to him? Especially because it's a sniper with an M1911 pistol. I don't think that this player would be very easy to find. I mean, we know what kind of players those are. Judging by what happens next, Enders makes the right call here. His game sense that he has built up over time is really impressive considering how many small details Enders takes note of to make his decisions. Enders then rushes in and displays a great showcase of nice accurate shooting, getting good headshots on the guy in the barn, flicking onto the drilling shotgun user in the house. Then he also makes a smart decision by quickly pushing the support player who had already been injured, as opposed to waiting and holding an angle of line of sight, and he efficiently makes his way into the barn, which is directly in the enemy spawn, and this next section right here is prototypical Enders gameplay. I'm sure that you've probably heard the expression once or twice as a kid, look both ways before crossing the street. Well, Enders must have heard this a lot in his childhood because he uses this advice liberally, and you'll notice this a lot when you watch him play for an extended period of time, and that's just how much he double checks a lot of angles before making a decision on where to go. The difference between the first clip that Enders sent me and this one is that in the first clip on Rotterdam, he was in a situation in which he knew where the enemy was, relatively speaking, and there was only one angle that they could come from because he funneled them in a certain direction. Here, he's in the enemy's spawn point and he doesn't have that luxury, so he double checks multiple angles, making sure the center of his reticle is in the center of those openings in case somebody actually does peek him from there. He checks the door twice, the left window twice, and the right window once before pushing the player that he saw come up from spawn. He jumps out the window and checks behind the wall because he did take some explosive damage from an artillery strike, but once he finds out that he is safe, he goes right back into the barn where he is concealed and has the best chance to outplay multiple opponents, because keep in mind, again, he is in the enemy spawn at this location. It's quite literally directly down the hill behind him. So he runs back in, and I love the way he plays this 1v3. He moves himself back and out of the open doorway so he can eliminate the amount of enemies that has line of sight on him, and then he just blatantly outplays everybody, including, and this is the cherry on top here, the sniper that shot him at the very beginning of the clip. Well, sometimes things just work out like that. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Battlefield Breakdown. Who would you like to see me break down next? Comment down below. I would like to thank Enders for collaborating with me and sending me what I needed to make this video. Thank you so much, man. The links to Enders' YouTube and Twitch are in the description if you would like to see more. As I explained at the beginning of the video, interactions really help with videos like these, so if you did enjoy it and made it all the way to the end, make sure to like the video, and if you want to see more from me and stay up to date on the series, make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications. I stream myself 4 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so follow me on Twitch if you are interested in watching those live streams. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Catalyst. We'll be back with another episode of Battlefield Breakdown next Friday. I will see you all another time.